The wind tore across Red Valley like it carried bad news. Dust rolled through the streets in thick waves, coating boots, wagons, and faces in a thin layer of grit. It was the summer of 1884 in the Arizona Territory, and the heat pressed down so hard it made tempers short and patience thin. Most days, the town moved slow. Men worked the livery. Women stayed in the shade. Children chased each other between wooden storefronts. But today was different. Today, a crowd gathered outside the sheriff's office, and not for something decent. Clint Rollins stood near the back, tall and still, his hat pulled low over steady gray eyes. At 36, he was known across 3 counties. Owner of the Rollins Ranch, a man who kept his word, a man who handled trouble without raising his voice. He had come to town for fencing wire and salt blocks. That was all. Then he heard the whispers. They caught her. Devil's Canyon girl, mean as a rattlesnake. Clint would have kept walking. He had no interest in town gossip. But then someone shouted, "Bring her out!" The sheriff's door swung open. 2 deputies dragged a young woman into the sunlight. Shackles clamped around her wrists. Her boots scraped against the wooden steps as she fought them with everything she had. The crowd gasped. She looked wild, not dirty in the careless way, dirty in the way of someone who had lived outside too long. Dark hair tangled around her face, a bruise purple along her cheek, dress torn at the hem, skin sunburned and scratched. But her eyes stopped Clint cold. Amber. Bright. Burning. Not scared. Not broken. Furious. "This here's the wild girl from Devil's Canyon," Deputy Collins shouted. Caught stealing supplies. Bit 3 men who tried to hold her." A man near Clint shook his head. "She ain't right." "She's an animal," another said. Clint studied her quietly. No, she wasn't an animal. She was cornered. The sheriff stepped forward, clearing his throat like this was just another chore. "Town council's decided she's too dangerous to keep locked up. Territory law allows auctioning her to someone willing to take responsibility." The words dropped heavy. Auctioning her. The girl jerked against the shackles. "I ain't property," she shouted. Her voice was raw but strong. "You touch me again, and I'll make you regret it." A few men laughed. Clint didn't. "Bidding starts at $20, the sheriff announced. "20, someone called. 25. 30. The girl spat at the ground. "You're all cowards." Her voice carried fire. Real fire. The kind Clint had once seen in the mirror years ago when life had stripped him down to nothing. Then Lyle Hargrove stepped forward. Clint's jaw tightened. Hargrove was broad and thick, with mean eyes and a smile that never meant anything good. He owned land east of town and treated people worse than he treated his cattle. 35, Hargrove said lazily, looking the girl over like she was livestock. "I'll break her soon enough." The girl lunged at him despite the shackles. "Try." The crowd roared. Clint felt something twist in his gut. 40, another rancher said. 50, Hargrove barked quickly. His grin widened. He thought he had it. The sheriff lifted his hand. "Any higher?" Silence fell. The girl went still. Not defeated. Not weak. Just bracing herself. Her jaw clenched tight, but her eyes dimmed just a little. Clint recognized that look. It was the look of someone who had fought too long alone. He stepped forward before he could talk himself out of it. 100. The crowd went silent. Hargrove turned sharply. "You lost your senses, Rollins?" Clint met his stare without blinking. "You heard me." The sheriff swallowed. 100 going once. Hargrove's hand twitched near his belt. He looked at Clint like he wanted to challenge him, but everyone in Red Valley knew better than to test Clint Rollins without reason. Going twice. Hargrove spat in the dirt. Take her. She'll gut you in your sleep. Sold. The shackles were unlocked with a sharp click. The deputies shoved her forward. She stumbled but caught herself fast. She didn't move toward Clint, and she stood there breathing hard, ready to bolt or fight. Clint kept his hands at his sides. He didn't reach for her, didn't step closer. "What's your name?" he asked calmly. She glared. "Why?" "So I know what to call you." Silence stretched. "Riley," she said finally. He tipped his hat slightly. "All right, Riley." She studied him, waiting for the grab, the order, the rough grip. It didn't come. "You can walk with me," Clint said, "or stay here." She looked around at the men who had just tried to buy her. Their eyes crawled over her. Then she stepped forward, not behind him, beside him. And the town watched as the wild girl no man could tame walked out of Red Valley with the only man who never tried to break her. The ride out of town was quiet. The sun dipped low, turning the sky orange and gold. Clint kept his pace slow. Yet Riley rode a spare bay mare, stiff in the saddle, watching everything. "You planning to run?" Clint asked after a while. She shot him a sharp look. "Maybe." "You know how to ride?" Her chin lifted. "Better than most men." "I believe it." That seemed to surprise her more than anything. They rode until the town disappeared behind hills. The land opened wide. Flat plains stretching toward distant red cliffs. The world felt bigger out there, less crowded. As evening fell, Clint guided them toward a creek lined with cottonwoods. He dismounted first and tied his horse loosely. Riley stayed mounted. "This where you tie me up?" "No." "You expect me to believe that?" "I expect nothing." He began setting up camp without looking at her. Built a small fire, set out 2 bedrolls, opened a tin of beans. After a long minute, Riley slid from the saddle. She kept distance between them. He handed her a cup. "Water's clean." She hesitated before kneeling at the creek. Her wrists caught the fading light. Raw, bruised, cut deep. Clint looked away so she wouldn't think he pitied her. They ate in silence. She devoured the food like someone who had gone days without it. When she finished, she wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. "Why'd you do it?" "Do what?" "Pay that money." He stared into the fire. "Because you deserved better than what was coming." She frowned. "You don't know me." "Maybe not, but I know men like Hargrove." That shut her up. Night settled heavy. Crickets chirped. The fire cracked softly. "You can take whichever bedroll you want," Clint said. She studied him carefully. "Oh, you ain't going to touch me?" "No." "You swear?" "I don't give my word lightly." Something in her shoulders eased. Just a little. She lay down facing away from him. He stayed sitting by the fire, keeping watch. After a long time, her voice came quiet in the dark. "If I leave in the morning, you going to hunt me down?" "No." "Why not?" "Ain't my job to cage you." Silence again, but softer now. "You're strange," she muttered. "So I've been told." He heard her breathing steady after a while. Sleep finally claiming her. Clint stayed awake under the stars, listening to the night, thinking about the look in her eyes when the bidding started, thinking about how close she had come to being owned by someone cruel. He didn't want to tame her. He just wanted her safe. Morning came bright and clear. Birds called from the trees. But Clint was already saddling the horses when he noticed Riley sitting by the creek, hugging her knees. She could have run. The land was open. But she hadn't. When she stood and walked toward him, her face held confusion more than anger. "I didn't leave," she said. "I noticed." "Don't read into it." "I won't." But something had shifted. They rode again as the sun climbed high. By midday, the Rollins Ranch came into view. A wide barn, a strong house, corrals full of horses, open sky stretching forever. Riley slowed her horse. "This your place?" "It is." She swallowed. The ranch looked steady. Safe. Almost too steady for someone used to running. Two ranch hands stepped out of the barn. Tom, older and sharp-eyed. Jesse, young and eager. Tom frowned at Riley. "Boss?" "She's staying," Clint said simply. Tom looked like he wanted to argue, but he knew better. Riley watched the exchange carefully. She expected insult, expected rough treatment. It didn't come. Clint led her toward the house. "You need food. Then we'll clean those wrists." "I don't need help." "Maybe not, but you're getting it." Inside, the kitchen smelled like coffee and bread. Riley stood awkwardly near the doorway, like she didn't belong. Clint placed a plate in front of her. "Eat." She did. When she finished, and he sat across from her, calm, patient. "You're safe here," he said. "But if you want to leave, I won't stop you." Her eyes flashed. "Why you keep saying that?" "Because you ain't a prisoner." She stared down at her hands. "I don't know how to be tame." He shook his head. "Good. I don't want tame." She looked up sharply. "I want honest," he said, "and strong." For a moment, her fierce mask cracked. Not much, just enough to show something fragile underneath. She stood and walked to the doorway, staring out at the open land. People tried to own what they saved. She knew that. It was the rule of her life. But Clint Rollins had not tried to own anything. Not her name, not her steps, not her choice. When she finally turned back toward him, her voice was steady. "I'll work." He nodded once. "All right." And just like that, met the wild girl stepped into a life she had never known. Not caged, not broken, just given a chance. And neither of them yet understood how deeply that chance would change everything. The first morning on the Rollins Ranch did not begin gently for Riley. It began with noise. Roosters crowing, horses shifting in their stalls, men calling to each other across the yard, the steady clang of metal against metal from the blacksmith shed. She woke before the sun fully cleared the horizon. For a moment, she did not know where she was. The ceiling above her was wooden, not stone. The air smelled like hay and coffee, not damp canyon walls. Then memory rushed back. Red Valley. The auction. Clint. She sat up fast, heart pounding. No chains. Her wrists were wrapped in clean cloth, where Clint had treated them the night before. The cuts still burned, but the sting felt different now. Less like punishment, more like healing. She swung her legs off the bed and stood. The room was small but solid. A real bed, a small wash basin, a window that looked out over open land. Freedom had never looked so wide. Outside, Clint was already working. He moved steady and calm, giving orders without shouting. The ranch hands listened because they respected him, not because they feared him. Riley stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching. She had seen men lead before, usually with fists. Clint led with quiet strength. Tom noticed her first. His eyes narrowed slightly, still unsure about her. Jesse gave her a quick nod, curious more than anything. Clint turned when he sensed her. "Morning." She stiffened, ready for some hidden demand. "What morning?" she answered cautiously. "You know how to saddle." Her chin lifted. "I was riding before I could walk." "Good. We're checking the north fence line." He said it like it was normal, like she had always belonged there. Riley hesitated only a second before stepping fully into the yard. Tom watched closely as she approached the tack room. She felt his doubt. It scraped at her pride. She grabbed a saddle without asking and moved toward a restless chestnut mare. The horse tossed its head and stomped, testing her. Riley met its gaze. Calm. Firm. She ran a steady hand along its neck and spoke low under her breath. Within moments, the mare settled. Tom's brows lifted. Clint said nothing, but his eyes held quiet approval. They rode out under a bright blue sky. The land rolled wide and endless, grass bent under the breeze. Yet far in the distance, red cliffs stood like silent guards. For the first time in years, Riley rode without looking over her shoulder every few seconds. Still, she kept one hand near her thigh out of habit, as if a knife might appear if she needed it. They reached a stretch of broken fence near noon. A few posts had fallen. Wire sagged low. Clint dismounted and handed her a coil of fencing wire. "You can handle that?" She gave him a look that said she was insulted. He almost smiled. They worked side by side, no talking, just the sound of hammer strikes and wind through grass. Riley worked hard, harder than she needed to. Sweat ran down her temples. Her hands stung with every pull of the wire. But she did not slow down. She needed to prove something. Not to Clint. To herself. At one point, her injured wrist gave out, and she dropped the wire with a sharp hiss of pain. Clint noticed immediately. "Let me see." "I'm fine." "You're bleeding." She glanced down. The cloth wrapping had darkened. "I said I'm fine." He didn't argue, didn't grab her. He simply held out a clean bandage from his saddlebag. "Wrap it tighter." That was it. No pity. No orders. Just help. Something warm and confusing stirred in her chest. They finished the fence before riding back. On the way, a small group of wild horses ran across the open field. Free, fast, untouchable. Riley watched them with open longing. "You miss that?" Clint asked quietly. She swallowed. "I miss not being hunted." His jaw tightened slightly. "Nobody's hunting you here." She looked at him carefully. "You can't promise that." He met her gaze. "Well, I can promise I won't let anyone try." Her breath caught. She looked away first. Back at the ranch, Jesse approached with a grin. "You ride like you were born in the saddle." "I was," Riley answered flatly. Tom stepped forward. "We got a stubborn colt in the South Corral. Been kicking at everyone. Think you're up for it?" There was challenge in his voice. Riley didn't hesitate. "Show me." The colt was young and strong, eyes wild with fear. It had likely never been handled properly. Men had tried to break it with force. That much was clear. Riley entered the corral slowly. No rope in hand. No whip. She stood still at first, letting the colt circle her. Letting it see she was not chasing. Not trapping. The ranch hands watched closely. After long minutes, she began moving carefully, but guiding the animal with quiet presence instead of pressure. Her voice stayed low and steady. Step by step, the colt's frantic movement slowed. Its ears flicked forward instead of back. When she finally placed a hand on its neck, the yard fell silent. Tom let out a slow breath. "I'll be damned." Clint's chest swelled with something close to pride. Riley stepped out of the corral, brushing dirt from her hands. "You don't beat fear out of something," she said quietly. "You give it space." Clint studied her. He knew she wasn't talking only about horses. That night, exhaustion hit her hard. But sleep did not come easy. The ranch was too quiet. No echoes, no distant shouts, no metal clanking against stone. Her mind filled the silence with old sounds. She woke gasping, sweat soaking her shirt. The dream felt real. Hands grabbing, chains tightening, darkness closing in. She stumbled out of the room and into the yard, desperate for air. The moon hung high above the barn. Silver light washed over the land. She pressed her palms against the fence rail and forced herself to breathe. "You all right?" Clint's voice came from the shadows. She flinched hard. "I didn't mean to startle you," he said gently. He had been sitting on the porch, unable to sleep himself. "I'm fine," she snapped automatically. He didn't believe it, but he didn't call her out. After a long silence, she spoke again, voice softer. "It don't leave." "What doesn't?" "The feeling." She swallowed. "Like I'm still there." He stepped closer, but kept space between them. "You're not." She shook her head. "You don't understand." "Maybe not exactly," he said. "But I understand losing peace." She glanced at him. He bashed him. He rarely spoke of his past. "My family died when I was younger," he continued quietly. "Fever. Took them fast. House felt empty after that. I kept hearing their voices long after they were gone." Riley stared at him, surprised. "I couldn't stop it," he said. "Time didn't fix it. Work didn't fix it." "What did?" she asked. "Letting it hurt." She frowned. "That don't make sense." "It doesn't have to." They stood under the moonlight, both carrying different ghosts. Riley wrapped her arms around herself. "If I stay," she said slowly, "I won't always be easy. I don't expect easy. I get angry. I've noticed. I don't trust quick. You shouldn't." She studied him carefully. He wasn't mocking her. He wasn't trying to shape her into something softer. "You're not scared of me?" she asked. "No." "Why?" "Because you don't hurt without reason." That struck her deep. No one had ever said that about her. Silence settled between them again. Not heavy, not sharp, just quiet. Finally, she exhaled slowly. "I ain't running." He nodded once. "All right." But peace never stays long in the West. 2 days later, trouble rode in from the east. Dust rose on the horizon just before sunset. 3 riders, moving with purpose. Riley saw them first from the barn loft. Her stomach dropped. She knew one of those silhouettes. Lyle Hargrove. He rode straight into the yard without asking permission. His smile was the same cruel one from Red Valley. "Well now," he drawled. "Heard you bought yourself a wildcat, Rollins. Thought I'd come see if she scratched your eyes out yet." Riley went cold. Every muscle locked tight. Clint stepped forward calmly. "What do you want, Hargrove?" Hargrove's gaze slid to Riley. "That girl ran off from land that borders mine. Caused trouble. Stole supplies. I figure I'm owed something." "You ain't owed anything," Clint said evenly. Hargrove dismounted slowly, boots hitting dirt with heavy intent. "Maybe I want to take her back. Finish what I started bidding on." The yard went silent. Riley's breath came fast. Her body remembered fear even if her spirit refused to bow. But Clint moved just slightly, positioning himself between Hargrove and Riley. "She's not going anywhere," Clint said. Hargrove laughed. "You think $100 makes her yours?" "No," Clint answered. "It means she chose to be here." Riley's heart slammed hard at that word. Chose. Hargrove's eyes darkened. "You planning to fight me over a feral girl?" Clint's voice stayed calm. "I don't plan to fight, but I will." The air thickened. Riley felt something shift inside her. For the first time in her life, someone was not stepping aside, not selling her off, not trading her, standing for her. Hargrove stared at Clint for a long moment. Then he looked at Riley. "You'll run eventually," he sneered. "Wild things always do." Riley straightened her spine. "Not from you." Hargrove mounted his horse with a sharp jerk. This ain't over." He and his men rode off in a cloud of dust. Silence held the yard long after they disappeared. Riley's knees felt weak, but she refused to show it. Clint turned to her. "You all right?" She looked at him. Really looked at him. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "Yes, I did." "Why?" His answer was simple. "Because you're not alone here." The words hit harder than any chain ever had, and for the first time since Devil's Canyon, Riley felt something she barely recognized. Safety. Hargrove's dust had barely settled before the ranch felt different. Not broken, not afraid, but alert. Riley moved through her chores with sharper eyes that day. Every sound carried weight. Every shadow made her glance twice. She hated that feeling. Hated that one man's presence could drag her back into old fear. Clint noticed. He did not hover. He did not smother her with questions. But he stayed near. Close enough that she would see him if she looked. That night, the wind rose strong from the east. It rattled the barn doors and sent loose boards knocking against the house. Riley lay awake, staring at the ceiling. She knew men like Hargrove. They did not let pride go easily. Just past midnight, the horses began to stir. First a few uneasy snorts, then hooves striking wood. Riley shot up in bed. Something was wrong. She rushed outside barefoot, not waiting to pull on boots. The yard was dark except for faint lantern light near the barn. Too faint. Smoke curled into the sky. "Clint!" she shouted. He was already running from the porch, rifle in hand. The south end of the barn was burning. Flames licked up the dry wood, feeding fast, while horses screamed inside. Riley did not hesitate. She sprinted toward the door. "Riley, wait!" Clint called. But she was already there, yanking the heavy door open. Heat blasted her face. Smoke filled her lungs. Two horses kicked wildly in their stalls. Fear had them trapped. She moved fast, hands steady despite the chaos. She cut one rope, then another. She slapped their flanks hard, driving them toward the open yard. Clint joined her, pulling another animal free. Tom and Jesse ran in with buckets of water. Then Riley froze. The stubborn colt, the one she had gentled. It was still inside, panicking near the back wall where flames crept closer. Without thinking, she darted deeper into the barn. "Riley!" Clint's voice cracked sharp with fear. She ignored him. Smoke burned her eyes. Yet the colt reared wildly as a beam fell nearby with a crash. "Easy!" she coughed, stepping closer. "Easy now." The colt recognized her voice even through the noise. Its wild thrashing slowed just enough. She reached it and cut the rope. A loud snap echoed above. Clint saw it at the same moment. A burning beam gave way. "Riley!" He lunged forward just as the beam crashed down where she had been standing seconds earlier. He grabbed her around the waist and pulled her clear as sparks rained down. They stumbled out into the yard together, coughing hard. The colt bolted free behind them. Moments later, the roof began to collapse inward. They stood in the yard, watching half the barn go up in flames. Horses were safe. That mattered. But the fire was no accident. Clint's jaw set hard as stone. "Gay Hargrove!" Riley's chest rose and fell fast. "This is my fault." "No." His voice was firm. "This is his." She shook her head. "If I wasn't here, he'd find another reason." She looked at him through smoke and tears. "You could lose everything because of me." Clint stepped closer. "I almost lost you in there." The words hit them both. Tom approached, face dark with anger. "Tracks east of the fence. 3 horses. They cut the latch before setting it." Clint nodded once. "Get water on what's left. We'll rebuild." Rebuild. Like it was that simple. Riley stared at the burning barn, and something inside her shifted again. She was tired of running from men like Hargrove, tired of hiding. By sunrise, the fire was out. Half the barn was gone. The yard smelled like smoke and wet ash. Clint had not slept. Neither had Riley. But when the first light stretched across the plains, Riley walked toward him slowly. "He won't stop," she said. "No," Clint agreed. "He thinks I belong to him, in some twisted way." Clint's hands clenched at his sides. "You don't belong to anyone." She met his eyes. "Then let's end this." He studied her carefully. "What are you saying?" "I'm done being hunted." Her voice was steady now, not wild, not afraid. "We go to him." Tom looked shocked. "That's dangerous." Riley lifted her chin. "So is waiting for the next fire." Clint thought long and hard. He did not rush decisions. But this time, the choice felt clear. By mid-morning, they rode east. Clint, Riley, and Tom. Hargrove's ranch sat low against a ridge, rough and poorly kept. Men like him ruled by fear, not respect. As they approached, 2 of Hargrove's men stepped forward, hands near their guns. Clint's voice carried calm but firm. "We're here to talk." Hargrove emerged from the house, smirk already in place. "Couldn't stay away?" Riley rode forward before Clint could stop her. Her voice rang clear. "You burned his barn." Hargrove shrugged. "Got no proof." "You're done," she said. He laughed. "You still think you can threaten me?" "I ain't threatening." Her eyes burned bright. "I'm warning." Clint stepped up beside her. "You come near my land again, you answer to the law. Oh, and to me." Hargrove's smile faded. "Law?" he scoffed. "Out here?" Clint did not raise his voice. "Red Valley's sheriff already doubts you. Word of that auction didn't sit right with everyone. If I ride back there and mention this fire, folks will start asking questions." Hargrove hesitated. Fear flickered. Small, but real. Riley saw it. "You lost," she said quietly. "You tried to own something that ain't yours." Silence stretched. Finally, Hargrove spat into the dirt. "You ain't worth the trouble." He turned and walked away. It was not a grand showdown. No gunshots, no blood, just power shifting, and Hargrove knew it. The ride back felt lighter, the air cleaner somehow. When the ranch came into view, Riley slowed her horse. Half a barn stood broken against the sky. Smoke still lingered faintly. "You still want me here?" she asked suddenly. Clint looked at her like the question was foolish. "More than ever." She swallowed. "Even if I'm trouble?" "You're not trouble." He paused. "You're worth fighting for." Her breath caught. They dismounted in the yard. Workers would come. Wood would be cut. Nails hammered. The barn would rise again. Riley stepped closer to Clint. Not wild. Not guarded. Just honest. "I stayed because you gave me choice," she said softly. "Not because you bought me." "I know." She looked up at him, eyes no longer filled with constant fight. Still fierce, but softer at the edges. "I don't need taming," she said. I don't want to tame you." She smiled then, small, but real. "I choose to stay," she whispered. The words felt bigger than any auction price. Clint reached for her hand slowly, not giving her time to pull away if she wished. She didn't. Her fingers slid into his. Strong grip. Sure. No chains, no cages, just choice. Over the next weeks, the barn was rebuilt, stronger than before. Riley worked harder than anyone. She laughed sometimes now. Rare. Bright. The ranch hands stopped doubting. They respected her. And at night, when the wind swept across the plains, Riley no longer woke gasping. She slept, not because fear vanished completely, but because she was no longer facing it alone. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky gold, Riley and Clint rode along the fence line. Wild horses ran in the distance, free and powerful. Riley watched them, then looked at Clint. "I ain't running," she said again. He smiled slightly. "I know." The wild girl no man could tame had not been broken, yet she had been believed in. And in choosing to stay, she rode straight into the heart of the only man who ever saw her, not as something to own, but as someone to love.